Welcome to the Inspirations Creative Christmas video, which is packed full of ideas to help you and your family enjoy the holiday season. Top florist Jane Packer is going to show how to make wreaths and swags for your home, while Inspirations Lisa Brown will be creating unique decorations.
A wonderful part of Christmas, and a beautiful wreath on your front door is a lovely way to greet guests. Wreaths can also look pretty inside the house, hanging from shelves, on an internal door, or even lie flat on a table.
Jane Packer is creating a wreath of mixed foliage, gathered fresh
From the garden, with a few shop-bought branches,
oranges and cinnamon sticks. Using garden foliage will of course keep the cost down, but there's always a large selection available in florists. Jane will also be giving us some tips on using dried ingredients as well. First, gather a selection of sturdy evergreens. They'll last the longest. Remember, a wreath that hangs outside in the cool air will stay fresher than one hung inside. Start by preparing your foliage. It'll have to last 2 to 3 weeks without water, so good preparation is one of your most essential jobs. And of course, always choose the freshest foliage that you can. Fill a bucket with tepid water. Cut the stems at an angle with a pair of florist scissors, pulling away any leaves or needles from the bottom 3 centimetres. To make sure that woody stems take up water, split the stems with scissors. Plunge them into the bucket. It doesn't matter if the greenery goes into the water, and leave for at least 2 hours, but preferably overnight. Fresh flowers won't last as long, but there are still some tricks that will extend their life. Trim the stalks and strip off any leaves. Cover the stems with wet kitchen towel or cotton wool and wrap in plastic. This way they should last up to 4 days depending on the flowers. Wreaths are best made on a rigid base, which will support the plant material. Jane has gathered together a wide selection. You can buy rings made from straw, twigs or bark, the most common being the wire ring and the florist's foam wreath. The florist's foam ring will keep your greenery fresh for longer, and you won't have to use wires. To prepare one, plunge it face down into water. You'll know when it's fully soaked because the bubbles will stop rising to the surface. Jane cuts the foliage at a sharp angle and pulls the leaves away from about 3 centimetres of stem. Before you start on your wreath, work out the kind of effect you want to achieve. You could decorate it with coloured ribbons or baubles to coordinate with the colour scheme in a particular room or the theme for all your Christmas decorations. Jane's decided on a traditional wreath with gilded cones, kumquats and oranges decorated with cloves. It's best to prepare all the materials at the beginning so you don't have to keep stopping and starting. It's really simple to wire up cones. Take a stub wire and wrap it around a cone, tucking it in as you go. Bring the 2 ends to the bottom and twist together a couple of times. Once on the wire, it's easy to spray your cones for a lightly gilded finish, but don't forget to cover the surface you're spraying on with paper. Apples and oranges are just as easy. Push a medium stub wire through the orange about 1/4 of the way up. Bring the ends down to cross at the bottom and twist together. Repeat with another wire, keeping the ends open to act like a claw when you attach them to the wreath. Ours are decorated with cloves pushed into the skin. Kumquats only need 1 wire. For cinnamon sticks, gather a bundle together, wrap a wire around a couple of times and twist. Tie a ribbon around to cover the wire. For her wreath, Jane chose a wire ring covered with dampened moss. She uses florist's reel wire to attach it to the ring. Taking a large handful of moss formed into a sausage shape placed on top of the ring, she wraps the wire over and tugs it towards herself so that it bites into the moss. Only unwrap enough wire to wrap around the ring once, otherwise you'll get in a tangle. Work around the frame until it's covered, making sure there are no thin patches. Tie off the reel wire and then trim the moss so it's neat. Before you start adding the greenery, attach a loop to the back for hanging. You might damage the wreath if you add it later on. Make sure it's secure as the wreath will be heavy. Jane's decided to hang her wreath by a long ribbon, which is added at this point as well. The last stage after preparing the base is to get the foliage ready. Try to prepare about 30 to 50 pieces before you begin, so you can keep working without interruption. Cut them into sprigs about 15 centimetres long. The foliage is attached to the wreath with hairpins of stub wire. To make these, simply cut the wires into 4 and bend in half. Jane starts by adding holly to the wreath. Work from the outside to the centre, with the foliage overlapping the outside edge by about 8 centimetres. Begin by covering the knot in the ribbon. Gather a couple of pieces together at a time, lay them down and pin into place. Tuck the hairpins over the join of the leaf to act as a hook, using 2 hairpins for bulky items and 1 for lighter ones. After the holly, continue around the wreath, building it up in sections of foliage, making sure that the sprigs are lying in the same direction and that cut stems and wires are covered. Once the wreath is covered with the foliage, add the decorations. Using the wires on the cones and oranges like claws, you should be able to push them through the moss, then turn the wreath over and tuck the wires back in, making sure they're securely fastened. Build up your design with cones, oranges, kumquats and cinnamon. Before you add the bow, hold the wreath up and give it a good shake, making sure everything is secure. Remember that it may be hanging on a door that's constantly being opened and shut. Choose a ribbon that matches your wreath and the colour of your door. Cut about 1 metre of ribbon, find the centre and pinch. Make a loop to one side and then the other, pinching in the centre each time. Wrap a wire around the centre. Twist to hold the bow in place. Pin it in place on the wreath and arrange the tails. We didn't want to damage the front surface of this handsome door, so Jane hung the wreath from a long ribbon attached to the top of the door with a drawing pin. You could use a piece of fishing wire instead, otherwise nail a hook into the front of the door and hang the wreath. Not all Christmas wreaths have to be made from fresh foliage. You can mix in artificial ingredients, either wired together or stuck with a glue gun. Jane has chosen to make a wreath completely from walnuts glued into position on the base. Don't worry about the strands of glue lying across the front of the wreath. They're easy just to tease away. It's more important to work quickly, not letting the glue set before you've stuck the walnuts in place. Garlands are expensive to buy, but simple and cheap to make. They'll add a real touch of Christmas to your rooms. If you want to twist a garland around a banister or drape it along a table edge, you'll need a flexible base of rope or wire. Jane uses soft rope for a garland to hang along a fireplace. Take the rope to where you want the garland to hang and measure the length you'll need. Remember to allow for the weight of the foliage pulling it down. Continuing the same theme for her garland, Jane prepares the greenery in the same way she did for the wreath and gathers together any other decorations she needs before she starts. Mark the centre of the rope with a piece of string. Begin at one end of the rope, attaching the reel wire. If you're going to hang it from hooks, make a loop at the points it'll be suspended from. Lay the greenery on the rope so it hangs downwards and work towards the centre, wrapping the wire around the rope and foliage as you go. Lay each new piece of greenery on top of the last and wrap the two together. This will make the garland stronger and ensure no cut ends are showing. Work from one end to the centre, then from the other, making sure they meet neatly in the middle. Finally, tie off the wire. Once the greenery is in place, add the decorations. Push the wires wrapped around the oranges and cones through the foliage and twist around the rope to secure. As this garland is going to be hung from a mantelpiece, Jane has added the decorations at the centre and at the points where the garland comes up to join the mantel. Not only does this look good, but it means that the extra weight will be fully supported. Nothing could be simpler than hanging the garland from the mantelpiece. Jane's secret is to use 3 butcher's hooks. Dig them securely into the garland and then hook it into position on the mantelpiece. If you prefer, you can buy artificial garlands and decorate them with baubles as we have here. To attach the garland to a banister, tie it with green garden twine hidden by the foliage to make it more secure. Choosing and decorating your tree is great fun. Lisa has chosen a traditional theme of red and gold, but you could create your own theme, mixing old, new and homemade decorations together. If you're buying a real tree, make sure you buy the freshest you can. Lisa tests the freshness by crushing some of the needles in her hand. The fresher the tree, the stronger the smell of pine. To extend a tree's life, treat it as you would flowers. Trim away branches from the bottom, cut an inch or 2 from the base and stand in water. You could of course buy an artificial tree. Look for designs with full needles on all the branches and a good wide base. Your tree needs to be fully supported. You can use one of several stands on the market, many of which come with containers which hold water. Or put your tree in a pot or bucket and wedge it upright with large stones. Try to cover any unsightly supports at the bottom of the tree. Lisa has made a tree skirt, a circle of material with the centre cut out. She chose red fabric trimmed with fake ivy to match her decorations. To dress the tree, start with your lights. Work from the top, and if you're using more than one strand of lights, make sure they each cover different sections of the tree. Next, add the garland. Tinsel is the most common, but Lisa chose a ribbon to fit in with her traditional theme. Again, starting at the top, spiral the garland down and around the tree. If you can't get it to stay in place, attach it with a piece of wire. The decorations are next. Hang one design at a time, making sure you scatter them all over. Don't add them all on one side. The tree could look and get a little unstable. The final flourish is adding an ornament on the top. Lisa's chosen a bow, but it could be a traditional fairy or star. On the Inspirations tree, we've mixed shop-bought and homemade decorations. To make enough decorations for a large tree would take a long time, but you can make a few special ones which might eventually become family heirlooms. Lisa's going to show how to make one using a simple polystyrene ball covered with sequins and beads. Start by covering the balls with ovals of tissue paper glued on with wallpaper paste. This gives a lovely textured finish. Now, using a glue gun, squeeze a short line of glue around the ball and press the sequins on. With a pin, pick up a silver bead, followed by a coloured one, and finally a large bead, and press the pin through the centre of the sequin. Do this while the glue is still warm, as it keeps the pin in place. Carry on until the whole ball is covered, except for the last sequin. This is where you need to attach the hanging loop. Another easy and cheap idea is to cut simple shapes from card and cover with coloured cord or natural string using a glue gun. If you don't have room for a large tree, or even if you have a table that you'd like to decorate, you can include a small tree. It's a lot easier to decorate smaller trees in one colour or style. Lisa has found a clever way to use a kitchen knife and fruit to create this striking tree. Engrave the limes first. To do this, hold the lime firmly in one hand and then press the blade of a cannel knife into the skin and rotate slowly. You need to work in one smooth action. Try and keep the blades as flat to the skin as possible. Once the limes are ready, cut the tip from the top of a foam cone. Starting at the bottom, push the fruit into place using 10 cm lengths of wooden skewers. Fill the gaps between the fruit with moss attached with hairpins of wire. Add the kumquats using wooden cocktail sticks. Top the tree with a lime and finally stand the cone on a bowl to display. You could repeat the same idea using baubles or cones. It doesn't have to cost a lot to create gorgeous wrapping, just a little time and forethought. You can either design your wrapping to follow a colour theme, or you could wrap presents individually to suit each recipient. If you'd like to decorate your own paper, you could stamp it, paint it, or stencil it. Rolls of inexpensive brown paper are ideal for this purpose. You can brighten them with ribbons and raffia. Boxes are the easiest to wrap, so if possible, place any unusual presents inside one. You could wrap them in corrugated card first to make a packet, or place on a circle or square of card and wrap like a bomb. Always work on a surface that's big enough to lay your paper out. To cover a box, attach the paper with double-sided tape. There should be a little extra for an overlap. Cut the end flaps to equal the depth of the box and fold down the bottom flap. Crease the paper sharply into the corners, fold in the side flaps and bring up the bottom triangle. Secure with double-sided tape. You can cover old shoe boxes. Keep the lid in place with a bow or paper ribbon. Curl the ends of the paper by pulling them over the blade of your scissors. For round objects like tins, cut the paper wide enough to go round the tin and attach with tape. Cut the ends to reach just past the centre of the tin. Starting at the inside flap, gather the paper together in small folds working around the tin, pulling the last fold in and sticking down. For bottles, treat the bottom as you did the tin. At the top, you can either fold the paper over or pull it in around the neck and decorate with ribbon. Bows can be the hardest part of finishing off any present. Make sure you have enough ribbon. Measure a generous length before you cut it. Start at the top. Wrap the ribbon around the box, twisting it in on itself at the bottom. Bring it back up to the top and tie it in a knot. Fold one length of ribbon into a loop. Lay the other length over this loop and push back underneath to form the bow. Pull to tighten. Now adjust the ties and loops. You don't want them to be too long, otherwise they'll flop about. To cut the ends in a neat V, fold the ribbon in half and cut at a 45-degree angle. It looks better if you have one end slightly longer than the other. Once the present giving is over, the last great festivity is the Christmas meal. Whether it's an intimate dinner for two or a large family lunch, first impressions are everything. Lay your cloth, making sure it's pressed and clean. Follow this with your mats. Build up the setting with plates, cutlery, glasses and napkins. It can look pretty to scatter nuts and cones across the table, but remember that guests must still be able to pass the serving dishes around. Jane Packer has created this simple table centre for you using terracotta pots. First, they're lightly gilded with spray paint, allowing some of the terracotta to show through. Tie a piece of paper ribbon around the pot and add a cinnamon stick. Place a bowl in the pot, half filled with water. Stand a candle in the centre. Now add the greenery around the candle, cut into 15cm lengths. Putting it straight into the water will keep the arrangement fresh for longer. Now come the bright touches, roses, cones and kumquats. Jane has a quick trick for gilding flowers. Take a little acrylic paint on your finger and rub it lightly onto the edge of the petals. When you've finished, check the pot to make sure it looks good from all sides. Make napkin rings to match by folding the napkin into 4 and rolling loosely. Tie a piece of paper ribbon around, then tuck in a cinnamon stick and gilded rose. Lisa has devised a more glitzy effect with 3 striking decorations made out of silver card you could use from year to year. She spaced the arrangements along the table, mixing them with dishes of glass beads. First, work out a design and then transfer it onto the silver card using tracing paper. Cut out the design carefully, then with the back of a kitchen knife and a ruler, lightly score along the lines to make the card easier to bend. Fold along these lines to create a fan. Fold an oblong piece of card into 3 to create the base and attach to the fan. Now take a piece of medium wire about 50 centimetres long. Bend over the ends with pliers, then wrap the wire around a pencil in a loose spiral. Bend in half and tease into shape. Glue small star sequins to the ends and tape the wire into place on the base of the decoration. Add another spiral to finish. You can also make a matching napkin ring. Cut a piece of card to form the ring, then add a fan to the top with wire details. Table decorations can be any colour, simple or ornate. Just remember not to make them too large. Or you could just create simple napkin rings by tying the napkins with twine or ribbon, anything that will hold them in place. Everyone at Inspirations wishes you a happy Christmas and hopes that Jane and Lisa's ideas will help you to create a memorable holiday.